I borrowed Siena Valley's photographs just to give some local color commentary. Thanks, Thais. So a little bit of background. Let me just straighten it up a little bit. So we are looking at this map of what we call the trajectory of ecological design. Where are we and where are we headed? And the world is mostly working in this range, maybe into the restoration. And the idea of green is that we can slow down the damage. We can reduce energy usage and carbon input into the atmosphere and reduce water pollution and toxicants in the environment. And all that is really important stuff, but it's still leaving a lot of negative on the table, as it were. So as Bill McDonough says, sustainability is a slower way to die. And we are working from green, which is somewhat level of efficiency, to a conceptual idea that zero damage must mean sustainability. But zero is impossible in nature. So in a way that the mark shooting towards zero is an insufficient way and an inaccurate way of looking at the world. So, because no matter what we do, we are going to create damage. If we're only working in this realm, we are degenerating the system. So, the alternative and complement is that we need to engage in restoration. And restoration means that we are restoring ecological subsystems so they have the self-organizing capability to evolve. And that's a really important concept, that we are providing a sufficient level of diversity and diversity of relationships so that life self-organizes, because it does a heck of a lot better job than we do. Regeneration is the next step. And regeneration includes restoration, but it's more than restoration. What regeneration is asking us to regenerate our understanding as life continues to evolve. When we restore something, it's not static, it's continuing to evolve, and we are continuing to evolve in that context. How do we co-evolve is what regeneration is looking at. And in fact, regeneration is more about the human being's capability to evolve oneself, involve the work that we're doing with each other in service of evolving the system of life that supports us. Another way to look at this is through Carol Sanford's four modern paradigms, that you can equate this to this graphic to extract value, which is pretty much what we're doing in the world, and continually extracting nutrients from the earth, ore from the earth, or minerals from the earth, spirit from employees and poorly run companies. Well, we can do better than that, so we think we can slow down the damage. That's a good thing, but inadequate. And then the alternative gets a little fuzzy. What does it mean to do good? Is do good adequate? How do we define what good is? What is net positive? What is positive rain in Santa Fe, New Mexico versus positive rain in the rainforest? Two different worlds, two different places. And so positive in one place can be incredibly damaging in another. And so we need to be a much more specific. In fact, do good actually can be seen as a form of colonialism at its worst. I'm going to impose my idea of what I consider to be good on a system I may not have any understanding about. So the next level is what we call an essence understanding, or the intrinsic nature. Every living entity in this premise has inherent potential to express life in unique ways. Every child is different. Every frog is different. Every tree is different. And unless we understand them on their own terms, we are imposing our idea on them, a form of colonialism. So I'll just read this definition of inherent potential. Whether with people or life sheds or watersheds, every living entity asks that we approach it individually to reveal and support its unique potential. So what does that mean? This little girl is probably wanting to be an airplane pilot. Sebastião Salgado's family farm, which was pretty destroyed by bad farming practices, um, basically was transformed in a period of about 15 years, is my understanding, but a relatively short time. Um, so nature wants to express higher orders of thriving, if you will. Every child, all of your children are significantly different than each other, and they have unique potential. And it's our job to tap into that. What's wonderful about living systems is they self-organize, autopoiesis, as Maturana and Pereira talk about. Life runs up. What we have a tendency to do is try to fix life when life knows very well what it's doing. What our role and opportunity is now is how do we align ourselves with the way life wants to work? I'm going to share with you a quick case study right now. And Ernesto, give me the hook if I go on too long. Um, uh, One of my favorite frameworks that have been around in various ways for the last 4,000 or 5,000 years is called the Law of Three. Yin Yang is another way to look at this, is that all life can be seen as an activating force and a restraining force. Democrat, Republican. I want to build a building. Well, life gets in the way and maybe we harm life. And what we have a tendency to do is compromise, or probably in Spanish, concede. Conceder is probably the better word. We concede, we lose. I give up a little, you give up a little, and we consider our egos sufficiently beaten up that we feel somehow satisfied. But compromise is also a slower way to die because when we compromise or concede, we then have to concede again. The next 3 years later, when we realize one person was right and the other maybe not so right, we concede again and we concede again. So conceder is a slower way to die, if you will. Um, Nature, though, doesn't work that way. Nature harmonizes, it reconciles, and it always looks into the future. And as Dana Meadows said, nature doesn't have problems, it has potential. We cannot impose our will on a system. We can listen to what the system tells us and discover how its properties and our values can work together to bring forth something much better than could ever be produced by our will alone. So the basic premise of regenerative work is that humans have a role to play in life. We have a very positive role to play. In fact, there's hundreds of stories about indigenous peoples creating probably some of the healthiest ecosystems on the planet because they understood how to work with the rhythms of nature. This is not about conservation and removing ourselves from nature. This is about how we participate and develop, improve, and evolve all life concurrently. So a quick case study, and I'm going to be very short on this. So Playa Viva is a project we worked on in 2006. Started business in 2008 in the worst of the global financial collapse. An old palm forest or palm plantation, basically ruining the diversity of species that were there. So we were brought in to work on this on a small eco resort of about 75 casitas. And we looked at the different patterns of nature. One pattern that seemed pretty strange is this topographic from a LiDAR map. Where did that topography come from in the jungle, if you will? Well, when we got on site, we found that was covered by trees. This is just after, so you can see it turns out it's an Aztec pyramid. This was the hill that the owner, David Leventhal, was going to put his casitas on. Well, that wasn't going to happen. So another thing that happened, though, in the first half an hour of our visit there is we met with some of the elders of this very small village. Hulachuca, Guerrero, Mexico, is 500 people and dying, losing population, losing the young people. Um, so we wanted to get to know the village and understand the nature of this ecosystem. And the wisdom that was there with the old residences was profound. In fact, what happened within really the first few hours of our visit there is David fell in love with the people and realized, oh my gosh, these people have so much to offer. We are not going to be an eco resort that gives people jobs in the village and they become waiters and housekeepers and this maintenance people. The concept switched in those first hours from we're going to plant an eco village for gringos on the Pacific coast to we are the village of Hulachuca. So how do we live as integral with this village? And that began a whole interesting set of explorations. But let me give you an example about this law of three. So David, I'm going to shut the door. Sorry. So David gave he said, well, we can't build the casitas on the pyramid. Well, I've got to move down to the barrier island, the barrier dune. And we said, not in our watch, you're not going to do that because the minute you put a hard foundation on a barrier dune and a storm surge comes through, it dissolves. So we said we're going to have to recuse ourselves from this project because we believe we're representing the best we can of nature. And David said, but Bill, you said you could harmonize anything, everything. I expect this to be harmonized. So I had indeed said that. So we sat down, we planned a meeting, and 3 hours after the meeting began, we got the solution. And the solution is when you're harmonizing, both sides, both perspectives get more than they ever thought they could have gotten. And in this case, what we realized is that there's lots of palm trees here. And we experimented planting palm trees. We planned this out, obviously. So the palm trees actually develop, and 80% of them take. And the plan was that we plant more palm trees on this barrier island and raise the casitas up a meter or two off the beach, so that the palm trees would actually hold the barrier dune even more securely. The storm surge would go underneath the treehouse and not take them away, not wash them away, as well as you're able to charge more money for renting these places, for selling these places because they swayed slightly in the breeze. So there's an example of harmonization where all species, all situations actually came out with a better idea. These guys were the former turtle poachers. They're now the turtle wardens and doing a great job of protecting the beach. So to wrap it up, it's a very successful example of a thriving ecosystem. The punch line, so they're improving agricultural systems, diversity in habitat, cleaning the water, educating people. They're actually paying for teachers to teach the teachers. The businesses are thriving. And what's really cool, the best indicator is that the teenagers and young adults are moving back into town. And so there's been in the 15 years that this has been in existence, there's a 40% population increase, 65 new jobs on the resort itself, but 80 to 100 indirect jobs. There's new businesses starting, taxi cab services, tourism services. They're advising other developers in the area. They're planting nurseries for trees, for plant stock for other developers, growing construction materials. And now they're expanding this work up into the mountains to engage all the other communities up about, I don't know, 15 to 20 kilometers. So they're becoming part of this thriving ecosystem, not just the eco resort, not just the village, but the whole region is now being restored as a result of this regenerative impulse. Plus, they're making a lot more money. So I'll stop there, Ernesto. Or maybe one more. No, let me just see if do I have one more? No. So do you want me to lead into this or do you want to stop
No,
first?
we'll let Tim come in and then we'll continue.
Tim's going to come in after the purpose, I thought, but sorry, folks, we're trying to figure out where we are. I thought we were going to review this, Ernesto, and then Tim.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So this is a relatively complex purpose statement for our work, and this will become refined and perhaps less wordy, but every word here is important. And we've spent significant time working through this, but any kind of input would be great from all of you. But let me read this. To co-develop, hence all of us are here, a place-sourced framework and methodology for understanding, measuring, and guiding the aliveness and evolving health of ecosystems and communities, rooted in living systems, complexity, and commons understanding, in a way that recognizes the interdependence of cultural, social, ecological, and economic systems, and makes this knowledge actionable through practical tools, technologies, and indicators, so that communities, investors, and policymakers co-evolve within nature's regenerative intelligence. Let me just shut this off for a second. Does that hold water for everybody? Does that make sense, or is it incoherent? Is it too wordy? Just curious. Any reaction?
Sure, Bill. I'm happy to give a reaction.
Sure.
I think that that's really wonderful as an internal facing purpose statement. So something for the people who are internally participating in the organization. And I think it would be great to streamline it for a public facing statement. I think that both can coexist. One that
Absolutely.
Yeah, one that really gets it across for the people who come in and want to have that level of depth, and then something that's a little bit simpler and more accessible for the people who are coming into contact with it for the first time.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Agreed. For sure.